Hello, I think we are live. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Raj Villero, Marketing Manager at Sencha, and I'll be your moderator of this session. Today's webinar is all about how to utilize Upgrade Advisor to upgrade your Ext JS apps. Before we begin, I would like to go over a few housekeeping items. First, if you have any questions for our speaker, please use the Q&A feature in the webinar platform to submit them. We'll try to get as many questions as we can during the Q&A portion of the session. Secondly, we'll be providing a recording of this webinar after the session, so you will be able to review it at your convenience. You will receive an email with the link to the recording in the next few days. Lastly, we encourage you to engage with us. You can use the chat feature to share your thoughts and ideas and also share your feedback. With that, let's get started. I'll hand it over to the Mark. Mark,
All right.
you now have the floor.
Appreciate that. Welcome, everyone. As you can see from the opening slide, we're going to talk about the Ext JS Upgrade Advisor. We'll talk about the process of upgrading an Ext JS application from version 4 as a good example, all the way up to the latest release, which is version 7.6. We'll talk about how you use the Upgrade Advisor tool, what it does for you, where you can find information about the rules it uses, all of that. And of course, we will have plenty of demo time. And then at the end, we'll stick around for a few questions. So let's get started here. So the idea of the Upgrade Advisor is to help you move between and into new versions of Ext JS. We provide a lot of information about versions as we release them. There's a what's new section in the documentation. We provide release notes. There's also an upgrade guide. But the best thing about the Upgrade Advisor is you point it to your application and it will tell you the things that it knows about that need to be upgraded. Either things it can do itself or things that in an organized way you can take care of in your move to the new version. So we'll talk about how you get the product. We'll talk about how you use it. We'll look at the different rules that, as I said, it uses. Under the covers, there's the processes using ESLint. So if you've ever linted your application, you're familiar with that process. The Upgrade Advisor uses ESLint to do the work it's doing. So we've written some specific rules for Ext JS. You can use the Upgrade Advisor user interface, or you can use a command line implementation directly calling ESLint once you've installed the rules. So we'll look at both those things. So before we do that, let's talk a little bit about the resources that you have when you're ready to upgrade your application. There are many things that exist in an application upgrade. As I mentioned, there's what's new, which is available for every release. And what's new is just a readable list of the things that are new. For example, in 7.6, we've had additions of a vertical slider, list filters, et cetera, et cetera. We also provide release notes. So the release notes are more specific to which tickets, which JIRA tickets we've gotten to. These are either tickets that reflect items that were caught by support, or something that you might have put into the support portal, or tickets that just talk about new enhancements and features. So that's always available. The upgrade guide is a more diff-oriented guide. So if you wanted to see the differences in the actual code that was written, you could do that. As I said, we do all of these guides and all of these diffs for every single version. So if you were going to upgrade and you did not have a tool, you'd have to go through every single version of every single upgrade to get an idea of what's changed. The Upgrade Advisor uses this information to do that for you automatically. So that's the great thing about it. So as I said, we're going to look at the Upgrade Advisor. It's a free product. It is been available for a while. Every time a new version comes out of Ext JS, we add that version to the Upgrade Advisor. So currently the Upgrade Advisor can upgrade all the way up to version 7.6. What I brought up here is just a little blog that introduces the product. If you care to take a look at it, it also has some nice links to how you acquire the product, getting started guide, and we've done several webinars that might help in giving you different dimensions on what the Upgrade Advisor is. So those are all available. One interesting thing though is we named the Upgrade Advisor, you see it sometimes with an ER, sometimes with an OR. So I just thought I'd throw this page in there that either one is correct, apparently. So if it's Upgrade Advisor with an ER or Upgrade Advisor with an OR, it's still the same product and it still works in upgrading your application. So just be aware of that. So the first thing you're probably going to do if you're going to use the Upgrade Advisor is acquire it. This is the page that is used to request the Upgrade Advisor. You just fill in the typical information that we would need. You click download now, and what you will get is information on how to download the Upgrade Advisor from our MyGet private NPM site. So that's the first thing you're going to do when you are ready to utilize the tool. Once you utilize the tool or once you download the product, it's a simple double-click installation, and you will have picked whatever your particular platform Upgrade Advisor is. For me personally, I'm running right now on a Mac, so I brought down the Mac version. And then ultimately, when everything's installed and you're ready to go, you'll get a runnable executable, and the Upgrade Advisor will be available to you, just like I'm showing you on the screen. So we're going to go through the parts of the tool. It's a pretty straightforward tool. We'll talk about what its features are. So just to kind of set the stage a little bit, the Upgrade Advisor supports upgrading anything from version 4X and above. So it does not support version 3 applications, but if you have a version 4 application or a version 5 or 6, etc., any of those are supported. You'll notice here that the current version dropdown has everything from version 4.0x all the way up to 7.6. If I'm in version 4 or version 5, you'll notice that I don't get access to the Modern Toolkit. That's because the Modern Toolkit didn't exist until version 6. So if you're in version 4, by definition, you are using the Modern Toolkit. So for example, if I wanted to upgrade an application that I have as a version 4.2 application, I would select the current version here. And then in the upgrading to, I would select what version I want to upgrade to. And of course, I want to upgrade to the latest version. If you want to upgrade to, a version 5 or a version 6, you certainly can. But we're going to go ahead and demonstrate bringing the application all the way up to version 7.6. The next thing you would do is point the Upgrade Advisor to a folder that contains, in this case, your current 4.2 application. So if I click here, select folder, and then select this folder icon on the right-hand side here, I can navigate to a location where I have an application. And in this particular case, I have this existing Ext 4.2 application. So I just select the folder, open it up, and then once I have that selected, to allow the Upgrade Advisor to analyze your code, you simply click this Analyze button, and the Upgrade Advisor starts doing its work. What it's doing is analyzing every single JavaScript file in that folder that you gave it, looking for things relative to an upgrade from version 4.2 to 7.6, and then reporting to you everything it finds, be it errors or warnings, and it's categorized in whatever way you want it to be categorized. Right now, it's categorized by file. You'll notice on the lower right-hand corner here, I can collapse everything and I see all the different files that it analyzed. I can open one of these, take a look at the errors it found, and you'll see this little green wrench next to some of these. This is an issue that the Upgrade Advisor found that it knows how to fix. And we'll go through that in a little bit more detail. But this is the general user interface. I can change how it's sorted or grouped. Right now it's grouped by rule, or I could group it by rule. It wasn't grouped by rule, it was grouped by file. You can then collapse all and see all the different rules that in this particular application, some sort of a warning or an error was found. And you'll see the number of rules or the number of things that it found. For any particular item, if you double click on it, you'll notice the right-hand side here will open up and the details of that particular warning or error will show up. It'll tell you what file, it'll tell you what rule it used, it'll give you a message, and then it will even show you the code where it found the particular error. So it's a nice way to get an overall look at what the issues are that you might want to solve. On the bottom here, you'll notice a summary. I have 110 problems, which amounts to 26 errors and 84 warnings. It looks like some of these can be fixed. It's potentially fixable. So before I go ahead and fix that, I'm going to bring up this same application in my editor. And this is Visual Studio Code. So here's my Ext JS 4.2 app. Here's all the files that are in here. And I brought this up because the files that are in this application are currently under source code control. They're under Git source code control. So they're in a Git repository so that when changes are made to the files, I will see that and it will show up in this particular area here. So let's go ahead and continue to move down the path here. And let's talk about what I can do to actually start solving these problems. So what are the problems that it's finding? Well, it's finding things like a variable has been deprecated, or a config has been deprecated, or something's been renamed, or something's been made private, or you're using something private. Overriding of classes, it will look for that. It will look for anything that is not standard per the rules that the Upgrade Advisor uses. And what are these rules? These rules are a set of ESLint rules. So if you've ever used ESLint on a project, what you can do is you can specify things like, when I create a function, I want to have a space between the function and the open parentheses. Or I want 2 tabs as opposed to 2 spaces. You can make syntactic rules. The ESLint plugin will also accept custom rules, and we built custom rules that correspond to Ext JS. So technically, the Upgrade Advisor is a wrapper around ESLint and the custom rules that we have built. What are the custom rules? Well, one way you know what custom rules are is by clicking the settings menu item. You can see here that there are many, many, many rules that are defined, like override method call, no remove property usage. So by default, we've defined the set of rules. We've defined whether that rule constitutes a warning, an error. You can turn off a rule if you know that it's reporting something that truly isn't an error or a warning to you. I can change this all at once. I can make all errors, all warnings. I can turn everything off. If I make a change, I simply click And you'll notice I get the little indicator that I've made a change. If I want to go back to the beginning, I just click reset all changes. So this is an exposure of the ESLint rules that we're using in the application. If you're not familiar with ESLint, head over to eslint.org. It'll give you a real good idea of what the product is, how you use it from a command line. And I'm going to show you actually how to do that in a bit here. So ESLint is an open source utility to deal with syntax, and it has a lot of nice default rules. We built on top of those rules to build the Upgrade Advisor to have it understand the Ext JS syntax relative to the upgrade that you're trying to make. What are some of those rules? Here's just, again, another laundry list. There's rules related to overrides. There's rules related to deprecated items, removed items, private, etc. A bunch of rules. These rules are documented in the documentation for the Upgrade Advisor, and it's probably a good idea right now to go over to that documentation. So in the documentation, underneath the guides, there is a section on Upgrade Advisor. The first section is Upgrade Advisor and getting started, kind of where we are right now. It talks about the installation process. It links you to the sign up page, talks about the private myget npm repo, and then how you install it. So we're up to this point. We're starting to look at the application itself. The documentation also documents each and every rule. So the no existing alias override has some details, explains what the rule is. So if you're getting a lot of warnings or you're getting errors in one of these, you may want to come to the documentation to read why that's an error or why that's a warning. So each one of these is really nicely documented. So we'll come back here in a few moments. So as I mentioned, we have a getting started guide. It walks through exactly what I'm doing. It will install the visual tool, which is an Electron app with an Ext JS application inside of it. So we're using Ext JS to provide you with this user interface through Electron. So we've already gone through the installation process. As I mentioned, you're going to request it on the form. You're then going to get an email that tells you how to access myget, something similar to this. You'll have a user ID, you'll have a password, you'll be able to download and then be able to install. And this is a representative of what you're going to see when you go to the myget repository. You're going to see the different versions of the Upgrade Advisor for Unix, for a Mac, for Windows. So you simply pick the one that's appropriate for where you're going to install it, and you're on your way. So we've talked about this already. I'm running on a Mac. It looks exactly the same on Windows or on Ubuntu, Linux, whatever you might be using. So let's go back and continue our look at the Upgrade Advisor. So far what we've done is we've brought our application in. We've recognized, I'll expand all, the warnings and errors. We've also recognized some auto-fixable capabilities with the little wrench, as I mentioned. If I want to apply all those fixes, if I want to go ahead and fix what the Upgrade Advisor can fix, inside the Upgrade Advisor, I have this button, Apply Auto Fixes. So if I click on this button, it's going to warn me, it's going to make changes to the code. And if I let it run, it's going to go through every file that it is able to fix and make those changes and eventually come back and tell me the results of the work that it did. It's going to take a little while depending on the size of your application. And in this case, you can see we've reduced the issues down to 17 errors and 45 warnings. If I then go take a look at the source code, you'll notice that the VS Code environment, since it's under Git source control, will show me the files that have been modified. So if I come over to the source control tab, look at the 12 changes, I can actually see what changes have been made. In this particular case, we used to have the auto load config, which has been deprecated to be now this loader config. And all of those are documented and are available here. So this gives you a good idea of exactly what you would get. And I could go scroll through these. I could see some of the other work it's done. In this case, I'm changing add class to add CLS. So that was a deprecated changed method. Auto scroll true used to be the way you provided scrolling. Now it's scrollable true. And et cetera, et cetera. You can kind of see here. And it's a really nice interface if you use something like the Git source code control diff to kind of see what changes have been done. The other nice thing is obviously you can revert any of these. If for whatever reason you don't want these changes, you could come over here and basically select all of these and just say revert. Click one of the discard changes or revert buttons and it will go back to the original source code. We may do that just to, I'll do that to showcase a few other things, but I want to take a look at a few other things here. Some things just can't be fixed by the Upgrade Advisor. A lot of these warnings are the fact that you're using an override. The Upgrade Advisor can detect that you're using overrides, but it really doesn't know what you were trying to do in the override. So there's really nothing that it can automatically do, but it is nice to have the list of these to be able to address them. And as I said, you can organize them, for example, by file. I can see that I have 6 issues that in some form or fashion I probably should address in the component.js file. I can use the interface to look at that, but I can also export this as a report, as an Excel spreadsheet. So if I go ahead and do that, I'll just replace whatever's there. Now in my, I think I downloaded it to the downloads folder. So I'll go ahead offline here and find it, and I'll double click on it. It will bring up the file in Excel. So here's that same data as an Excel spreadsheet. And what's nice about this is now you can start doing maybe some further analysis. Maybe you're going to give certain developers certain parts of this, and you can sort it any way you want. It's real nice that it gives you the name of the file, the reason it is a warning or an error in the message column, and then it even shows you what line and what column the error message is. So this is a really nice report. I'm going to show you one other way you can get even better contextual information about things you have to address if you're using Visual Studio Code. We'll get there in a moment. So we've talked about this application. We've talked about the actual process of upgrading. We've looked at the settings. As I said, you can manually change the settings. So for example, if you're getting a lot of this particular method override warning, and you're fine with that, you've got overrides covered, you don't want to see that warning in the list of messages, you can find that particular rule here and just turn that off, or you can make it an error, whatever you might want to do. So we've come up with what we think is a good starting point for these messages, but we want to give you the freedom and flexibility to change those things. We also have another tab here called API docs. If I pick a version, so I pick 7.6, this gives you a little bit of a different spin on the API documentation. Most of us are used to going over to the API documentation on the website. So if I go to docs.sencha.com, select the documentation, I'm in Ext JS 7.6 for the classic toolkit. I might want to see information on a grid, so I click on that. So this is the documentation that we're used to, and all the configs, all the properties, all the methods are documented here. You'll notice that a lot of these have little indicators that they're private, that they're deprecated, let's take a look at the deprecated one because we've already seen this. We had add class in our 4.2 code. So the documentation that's done with Ext JS indicates when a config is deprecated. And you'll see here, it tells us that, tells us how long it's existed, tells us when it was deprecated. So this was deprecated in version 4.1. And in this particular case, the deprecation gives us a remedy. So instead of using add class, use add CLS instead. So this is the information that the Upgrade Advisor used to be able to actually make the change. So this particular deprecation had a wrench, a green wrench, and made the change because of one of the rules that was out in ESLint. So it's a really nice way to kind of see what's going on and how the Upgrade Advisor is working through linting. So here I can see all of the classes in a more tabular format. I can see everything that's deprecated. So if I'm getting a lot of deprecated messages, or if I want to know what is deprecated in version 7.6, this is a nice way to just get a laundry list of those deprecations in one place. Same thing is true for private. And then there's another one where there's things that are out there that aren't completely documented, and maybe you're hitting something or you have some error and you can't find it anywhere. It's a good place. A good thing to look at is here. Maybe something you're doing just isn't documented the way you would expect, but you can find it here. So just a little bit of an enhancement to the documentation, which is a nice reason to have the Upgrade Advisor around as you're doing development. So I've shown you how you use the Upgrade Advisor in the visual Ext JS Electron application. It's pretty nice, pretty easy. There's a few things about it that you may not like as much as you might. For example, there's no way to just make one change or to accept one change. There's only one button that says make all the changes. So you may want to be in a situation where you selectively look at the issues, make sure they're correct, and then maybe one by one make those changes. That is a capability of ESLint. And if you're using Visual Studio Code, there's a Visual Studio Code extension that works with ESLint that makes it even nicer. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. So using ESLint on the command line is pretty straightforward. We have, there's an installation guide in ESLint. We have some additional information in the ESLint plugin guide. What I'm referring to is this. If I go back to the guides, I go back to the Upgrade Advisor, getting started. The first part of this is getting started with the visual tool. But if I scroll down here, there's a section on installing for command line use. So if you want to install ESLint globally, you would use this command. And ESLint is delivered through NPM, the Node Package Manager. So you can either install ESLint in your project, so this would be a project NPM install, or you can install ESLint globally. If you install ESLint globally, typing ESLint will always bring up the tool. So I've done the install globally. So if I go back to my Visual Studio Code environment, let me find it here, and I bring up, I'm going to close this window. Let me close this. Let me close everything. I have a terminal window up here on the bottom. Let me clear it, and let me just type ESLint. It's available because it came back without an error. I haven't given it any parameters yet, and we will in a moment, and I'll show you how you run it. But ESLint is one of the things we have to get installed. If we want to use the custom Upgrade Advisor rules, we have to also install those rules. And let's assume I'm going to install them globally. So I would use this npm install of the ESLint plugin Ext JS ESLint rules. And then once those two installs are done, ESLint and the install of the plugin, now I have the ability to run linting using those rules. The other thing that happens when you install is you have a couple of configurations that you can tweak if you want. So if I go back to my application here, go back to the source code, and I take a look, I've got this eslint.rc.json file. You'll notice that because I've installed already the ESLint environment and the Upgrade Advisor plugin, I have that right here. So this is what makes a custom plugin available to ESLint. You'll also notice that I can configure the custom plugin. So in this particular case, I want to use the recommended rules. And those recommended rules we saw visually are the warnings and errors that are there by default. You can also tweak those rules here. So these are commented out at the moment, but if I wanted to change the no existing class overrides to an error, I could do that. By default, I believe it's a warning. I can type the word error, or I can put a 0 or a 1. This is all documented in this getting started guide. So all the rules that are here and your ability to change or customize is what's documented right here in rules. So once all that is done, I can now run ESLinting on the command line. And just to make it interesting here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take all of the files that were modified and I'm going to revert them back so I can see how the ESLint environment works with the original source file. So I'll just discard the changes. So now my source code is back to the way it was before I ran the Upgrade Advisor. So if I came back to the Upgrade Advisor and I ran it again, or I ran the analyze again, so I'll come up here to application, run analyze, it's going to give me back those errors and warnings that I had originally because I undid its original changes. So when it ran, remember it had 110 problems, 26 errors, 84 warnings. Let's go ahead and do that same thing using command line ESLint on the Visual Studio Code project. So I'm pointing at the same project. I'm sitting here in the terminal window in the same folder, and I'm going to just add one parameter. I'm going to type ESLint on the current folder. That's what the dot means. So if I hit enter here, we'll start ESLint. The ESLint environment will recognize that there's a plugin. This information on the from and to version is coming from the plugin. And then you'll notice what I get here is the same warnings and errors, but spit out to the terminal window. The same warnings and errors here. So now I have an ability to see all of the errors, and I could, individually go to the files, and I could start looking at each one of these errors and potentially doing something about it. The other thing I'm able to do, which is similar to clicking this apply auto fixes button, is run ESLint with the -- fix option. That will fix everything that it can fix, just like that button did, and then rerun linting and give me the results. Not going to do that quite yet because I want to show you one other thing that you can do if you're in Visual Studio Code. Those of you who use Visual Studio Code know that one of the characteristics of it is very good at providing for an extension environment. So you can install extensions into your VS Code environment, and ESLint is one of those extensions. So I have this one already installed. That's why this says uninstall. And when I do have ESLint installed, if I go to a file, let's go back to the file system, let me open up one of my views, let's say this auto load view. You'll notice that I get the red squiggly lines underneath things that are related to the linting. So for example, this one, auto load, is usage of a deprecated config found for ext components. So this information under here is coming from the custom rules that come with the Upgrade Advisor. So I can look at each one of these. If I click on this, you'll also notice I get a little light bulb, which gives me some abilities, gives me actions I can do individually on this particular issue. This is where the ESLint environment on the command line with the extension gives you a little bit more granular capability. So here, I can look at the options here. I could say fix this. I could say fix all of that in anywhere that's in the application. So anywhere it's found this auto load issue, go ahead and fix it. I can disable that particular item. What does disable mean? Disable means add a line above this that the linter will know to skip. So you're looking at this and you're going, well, it's not going to skip it because it still has a red squiggly line underneath it. That's because now this is falling under a different issue. And I can disable that one as well. Now that I've disabled both of them, if I scroll to the right, you'll see that. So I've disabled the no deprecated config usage and no removed config usage. Now it passes, but it's not right because that is a deprecated config. So what I really want to do is take that rule or rules out and potentially go back here and fix the problem. So a blue light bulb in this context is fixable. So I'll go ahead and fix this. I'll just click on this and there you go. The same change that the Upgrade Advisor made, changing that config to a loader config, is made here because that's built into the ESLint rule. You'll also notice I'm in a file, it's red, it says there's errors, there's 4 of them, it's modified, and on the bottom here, I've got a problems tab. So the problems that are in this file are also documented down here. So again, I could move between those problems, either errors or warnings, just by clicking on one of these. So this may be the way you want to use the tool. You may want to look at and examine every single thing it's found and make a decision, an individual decision, including the decision to ignore in the file itself on a one by one basis. So you have that capability here to do that. Okay, so I wanted to be able to show you that extension. I think that's a great way to work in this. You can use both of these at the same time. I could do some of the work with the command line. I could do the other work with the Upgrade Advisor, the UI. I can also then come back and maybe run the command line ESLint tool with the fix option. So let's try that. So right now I have 110 problems. I probably have one less problem because I fixed one. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to rerun ESLint here with -- fix. Now remember, 110 problems, 26 errors, 84 warnings. So this is going to run again, just like the Upgrade Advisor did on the command line, doing the exact same thing. It's using the custom rules. It is scanning the code. It is now making the changes. And I like to run Visual Studio Code with the autosave property on. So as soon as it makes the changes, the file is saved. So you can see here now I've reduced the number of errors and the number of warnings. You'll notice my source code control now says again 12 changes, just like I had before. And I could examine those changes here. Here's what it was before, here's what it is now. Kind of moving through the file, I can selectively commit these as I'm working. So the integration in Visual Studio Code with linting and the custom rules of the Ext JS Upgrade Advisor really make this a very flexible tool. You can run this in your continuous build, continuous integration cycles. This is a good thing to keep on in general if you're doing coding. You should have a rule that says you can't check in any code if there are errors from a linter. I mean, that makes sense, right? You're not going to be able to build that application. So catch it at the point of the issue, which is the development, not in the testing cycle. Try to catch as many things as early as possible. So including linting into your process is definitely a best practice, and including the Ext JS rules just gives you that extra level of detail. Okay, so that's the command line. As I said, the instructions pretty much lay out what I just described, which is how to install it, how to run it. You'll get a few little tips in this documentation as well. I ran ESLint on the entire folder. You can run ESLint a file at a time, so you get some level of granularity a file at a time. And then if you want to run it against a folder that's not the current folder, you can do that as well. Okay, so I think that's probably everything here. Feel free to ask any questions out of that. Let me come back here to the slides. Again, to summarize, within Visual Studio Code, you can use the ESLint extension, and that really makes the whole experience that much better. You just saw me demonstrate that. Okay. With that, I want to summarize and give you guys a bit of information, since we're here on this webinar, of things that are coming, things that are up next. Then we'll do a couple of questions and answers if there are some, and we'll go ahead and wrap up. But the first thing I want to talk about is the virtual SenchaCon event. Oops, sorry about that. It is coming in April, and it is available to register. So if you're interested, we've always had great success with this. It's an all-day event. It's free, and we have a bunch of speakers here, including myself. I'm going to talk about Rapid Ext JS, and it's a mix of Sencha folks and MVPs, and as I said, usually a very good event. I'm looking forward to it. A couple of other things that usually go hand in hand with the Upgrade Advisor. Customers always ask, well, okay, I like the Upgrade Advisor. It does a lot for me, but it doesn't do everything. And most people, if they're working in a version 4 environment, haven't had the time yet to learn best practices of a version 7 environment. So can I get some help if I want help? And the answer is yes. And there's 2 ways you can get help. There's Sencha advisory services. So the advisory services is basically buying a block of hours of an expert. You can use that any way you want. You can use it to do an upgrade. You can use it for training. You can use it to help coding, do mentoring. It's been a very popular way to get some level of expertise mixed into your application. If you have a more formal project, if you want to have the entire application upgraded so you can focus on the current application and then the new one, there is kind of an extension of advisory services, a more formalized project-oriented service that we call professional services. So if you're interested in, having part of the team be a team of experts, that's probably where you're going to head. And then one last thing I want to get people excited about is the building of our latest product called Rapid Ext JS. Currently in beta, currently available beta. So if you're interested, you can go ahead and get it. Rapid Ext JS is a Visual Studio Code extension, so it can live in the world that I just showed you with the linter, that provides drag and drop visual design capabilities. As if anybody's ever used Sencha Architect, think next generation of Sencha Architect. We want to bring this tool to bear, taking advantage of modern tooling like Visual Studio Code extensions. We want to make sure we also eliminate some of the challenges of Architect, like metadata requirements. So we started the beta about a month ago, going very well, and I'd encourage you, if you're interested, to go ahead and come up to sencha.com and download the beta. And then finally, you can always follow us on Twitter. You can leave me a message. This is my email, mark.cusmano@sencha.com. I'd be happy to answer any questions. And speaking of questions, I'm going to go ahead and ask if we do have any questions. I can answer those now, and I'll turn it back over and see if we do.
Thank you. Thank you, Mark, for the presentation. It looks like we have few questions that
All
have been
right, great.
submitted. Yeah. If you are still with us and have a question, please submit it via questions panel. Here you go. Here's the first question. How safe it is to apply auto fixes throughout the application in one go? Any chances that functionality would break?
That's a good question. I mean, the auto fixes are based on the documentation. So we are very diligent about, documenting correctly. Will I say that there's never a chance that anything could happen? No, but I haven't heard anything major. And then, of course, you can always revert your changes. I would never make changes on the only copy of your source code that you can never revert back to. So that's probably never a good idea, but I think it's pretty safe. I mean, that's usually what people do because there's quite a few things you might have to address after that. So why not let the tool take advantage of the easy stuff that it finds and then move forward? So short answer is I would go ahead and I would feel comfortable.
Thank you, Mark. Here's the next question. What's the best place to find Upgrade Advisor documentation on Sencha?
The Upgrade Advisor documentation, as I said, is on our main documentation site. So docs.sencha.com. And it's under Ext JS. It doesn't have, I don't think it does. Let me see here. No, it doesn't have its own section. So you want to go over to Ext JS, go to documentation, and then it's under guides. And it's this open tab here. So Upgrade Advisor getting started, Upgrade Advisor custom EM lint rules. So this is the documentation that exists for Upgrade Advisor. I would also say that the ESLint documentation is kind of also documentation, and we do have a link inside here to actually access the ESLint documentation itself. So just come on down here right there, eslint.org. So that's another good source of documentation for ESLint in general.
Thank you, Mark. It looks like we have answered all the questions asked at this time.
All right, fantastic. Well, as I said, I'd encourage you to go ahead and get Upgrade Advisor, download it, install it, try it on your version 4 or 5 or version 6 application. If you do end up coming up with questions after the session here, I'd be happy to help you along with those. Again, copy down my email address that's on the screen now. Looking forward to hearing from you. Thank you very much for listening, and look forward to seeing you in the next webinar. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mark. Thank you again for joining us today, and we hope to see you at our next webinar. Have a great day. Bye-bye.